We will go live on Facebook in 3, 2, and 1. Welcome to a special evening with yours truly, Dragan. H Dragan. 10:30 p.m. EST in Hawk Island, Montreal. Grateful, thankful that my rent is paid. Just paid my rent for the month of June. That rent is paid, electricity bill is paid, phone bill, half of it is paid. That trinity of bills, that trinity, the fourth dimension, have food, so I will not complain in this video. I will be grateful and thankful and appreciate that my rent's paid, electricity bill is paid, half of my phone bill is paid, and I have food. And this thanks to my sister, thanks to my sister who gifted me this anonymous strong tasting red wine from World Peace special edition. Meditation, continuing the philosophical, social, geopolitical analysis, which of course have began last week, and which I'm continuing today, and which will continue coming day, or perhaps next week. World Peace. You'll have to forgive if I do some Freudian slips. I'm a third Freudian, a third Jungian, and 1/3 Crowleyan, with a fourth dimension, my own Adriana Dragan's independent psychosexual theories, which perhaps will complement in between with digressions and discernments, and discerning digressions XYZ going back in time, coming back to today, June 1st, 10:35 p.m. EST in Hawk Island, Montreal, speculating of things tomorrow and the day after. Back in, not such a connoisseur, although in past lives have owned vineyards by the Nile in ancient Egypt, by the Danube, ancient Greece and Rome, and in Germany, past lives by the Rhine and the rivers. Strong, rough, lingering taste with a dark tone, strong finish. This wine is the collective of North American civilization. Is my own created theory, which I've written in past years. One foot in the streets, one foot in the libraries of Hawk Island, Montreal, aka Montreal, HAWK, Hawk Island. If you look at a map of Montreal, big metropolis of North America, see that, to me at least, it looks like a bird with spread wings, and we do have hawks, HAWK, my favorite bird in Montreal. Yours truly, Adriana Dragan, androgynous pansexual, founder of the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom, with the three main flags of North American civilizational collective: Canada, US, and Mexico, although I include Cuba and the islands in it. Do not have the flags, and space is limited. As you can see, the Canadian flag, United States flag, and the flag of Mexico, which do have in the background. If you are to say to make a North American civilizational flag, we will have to come with something more regional, maybe something that, if we look at the map, to me it looks like another form of bird, or even a scorpio from above. Canada, United States, and Mexico joined together on the map. Of course, some other people, it might and can look as a different type of creature or animal or even a geometrical shape or artistic shape or creation. Welcome to this raw, real, unedited, although semi-sophisticated, a little bit cosmopolitan and partly intellectual, partly speculative event with yours truly, Adrian H. Dragan. North American Civilizational Collective, or the collective of North American civilization. Collective of North American civilization is my theory. Of course, that North America constitutes a civilization. What is a civilization? A civilization can be defined in many ways. We have civilization which has to have general common denominators, and these common denominators can be a language. Although we have three main languages in the North American Civilizational Collective, which is English, which I'm speaking now, which is French, which do love and speak, do have the flag of Quebec flag right there, although could not place it due to the space constraints. And of course, Quebec, it's unique geographical province and area of North America, which has the predominantly French language, which yours truly is perfect bilingual and also write poetry, songs, and philosophy in French and pertinent to mes frères et sœurs de la belle province du Québec. So civilization has common denominators. Civilization can be a fusion, an amalgamation, a mixing of different cultures, however, of different nations, different peoples, perhaps with different languages and customs, which adopt a common general language. It can have subvariants and dialects of that language, but the generalities and the common denominators must comprise a population, a big population, bigger in number, and that usually expands in terms of on the world 23,000 or so kilometers. It has to be on a bigger area, geographical area, a big geography. It's like we say Sino civilization, or Sino Sino, referring to China when we speak of China, or Indian civilization, or Western civilization. Big geographical space, common denominators with a culture or rules, even to a certain point religion, although it can be multi-religious, form of a plurality of religions or spiritual beliefs, cultural, social, which form that civilization. However, the North American Civilizational Collective, or the collective of North American civilization, those two words go hand in hand. Because my theory is not civilization of North America or the North American civilization. It has the word collective in it. It's not three words, North American civilization or the civilization of North America. It's the collective of North American civilization, or the civilizational collective of North America. So the word collective stands in parallel with the word civilization. A collective not necessarily a cooperative. So the word collective is to denote the peculiar common denominators unique to the North American geographical and populational geography, the geographical expanse, the landmass comprising North America, right? Thousands and thousands of square miles, plus the demographics, meaning the populations. So the word collective would mean an inclusion, a fusion, a unity, an integration of several different parts to form a common denominator or plural common denominators, perhaps with a common goal, common aspirations, common set of rules, regulations, principles, aspirations, and so on and so forth. So it's important that my theory be understood from this fusion, or the importance of the words by which I am made my analysis, my discernment, and my thesis, if you will, as the People's Doctor, North American philosopher, independent geopolitical analyst and theorist and philosopher of this theory, the North American Civilizational Collective. That is my own unique created theory, and written and digress now, expounding orally in a verbal lecture live on this Facebook, utilizing the technology, my connection to the internet, to live stream it on Facebook. The North American Civilizational Collective comprises, and it's in many ways, this is another point very important, born from Western civilization, at the same time paradoxically united in many ways with Western civilization, still joined, not necessarily completely cut off or separated or distinct from Western civilization, but at the same time there's a distinction, but not a complete cut off or complete difference from Western civilization, born from Western civilization with distinct cultural norms, distinct common denominators, distinct set of rules, distinct history, and maybe, this is an open question, a unique, distinct destiny. Not completely a breakaway from Western civilization, not completely being cut off completely from Western civilization, but distinct from, with unique characteristics, common denominators, aspiration, variety of the development. So we go back in time now. The origins of the North American Civilizational Collective date a little bit predating the Second World War, but mainly, principally, foremost, the Second World War is kind of the point of origin, the beginning, your rise, the birth, if you will, of the collective of North American civilization, or the North American Civilizational Collective. And the main points, that is an important point. So if you want to take it point by point and analyze the main points of the theory of my geopolitical, social, philosophical, political, cultural, geopolitical analysis, which this theory comprises and is put forward, of the North American civilization and the collective, is the birth, the point of origin, Second World War. So we have to go back in time a bit. The Second World War was, of course, it was a war between nations comprising, being part of Western civilization. And Nazi Germany invading France and their neighbors, both part of the Western civilization. Conquering France, invading France, Poland, annexing Austria. Fascism, communism, aren't they? Part of the Eastern Europe, still part of Western civilization, right? Now, many say Russia is part of Western civilization. Some say Russia has its own unique civilization, such as Alexander Dugin's philosophy, which I've been studying and learning about in the past days and weeks due to the Ukraine-Russia crisis. Not gonna go into that's another cup of coffee or another just wine on that. It's not the topic. And if somebody wants to commission, sponsor a finance an in-depth, and I have analyzed in-depth perspectives from the speeches of Vladimir Putin, from Alexander Dugin, which is a geopolitical analyst and theorist and philosopher, just like I'm a philosopher and geopolitical analyst, counterpointing his ideas with my own theory and analysis and proposition, and hope the North American civilizational collective, the collective of North American civilization, and my own theories about its security, its prosperity, its liberty, with all the flaws and all. I'm not perfect, far from it. I'm a global world citizen, but this is a peculiar, unique geopolitical analysis, philosophical analysis, social analysis, and proposition of theory, as much as do believe in humanity coming together, peace and love. We have to also love by action, and have a lot of problems. Myself, I can, as a joke, like somebody said, we need a revolution. I said I'd be calling for a revolution for a long time, but first I also gotta clean my own room. So, to cleaning the room, to the balance between the public and the private, to more understanding, to not without lusts. I do have lusts, I do have vices. I don't play self-righteous. I don't get moody, get upset. Medicine and therapy for me is working out, training, exercising, and reading, analyzing, and things of nature and civilization and spirituality as a universal spiritual teaching student, because I'm learning every day. So the North American Civilizational Collective was born from that Second World War. And it's not a breakaway. The North American Civilizational Collective, the collective of North American civilization, is not the complete cutoff or breakaway from the Western civilization. There's a distinction and a unique collective of civilization, because it's an amalgamation of different civilizations, the main one being Western civilization, but it's a transcendence. It's a sort of a development of a new sort, a new type, that is a collective of civilization. So Second World War, we have wars in Asia, the Japanese Empire, Empire of Japan, the Nazi, some say empire, fascism, communism. There's war within Europe, within Western civilizations, countries within Western civilization fighting each other. At the same time, on the North American geographical expanse, Canada, US, Mexico, there is no direct open warfare. There is no war between the US and Canada, US and Mexico. Sure, there's problems, the Great Depression, other economic problems, criminality, prohibition, whatever the problems were, urban problems, and poverty and racism and homophobia and all that existed back in the Second World War and after. There's problems that still exist. We address them in our hearts. It's hard to admit that we deal with subconscious biases and prejudices when we walk the streets. And it's not easy to admit our psychological, at least openly. Just like our dispositions or our characters or our skills complement each other, and it's hard to admit that in certain situations or skills we lack. Right? We gotta be complemented by others. It comprises a civilization, right? Like myself, got some brains and some muscle. Got some brains and some muscle. Got some brains and some muscle. Can do this, can do that, and other things are mediocre, average, right? Not that good. Hard things to admit. So the North American Civilizational Collective, the origins is the Second World War, and it is paradoxical. In many ways, it's a paradox, and in many ways, the collective of North American civilization is born, spawned by the Second World War in response, a direct response to nations within Western civilization being at war with each other. And many politicians, the academia, the intellectuals of Mexico, Canada, US, at some level or other understood that, starting to understand the need for an integrated North American approach in security and prosperity due to that. Right? And there have been treaties which evolved courses of the decades from the Second World War till now, today, 2022, June 1st. As a pan-North American citizen myself, a proponent of this theory, and with different ideas and theories to be integrated, such as citizen integration theory, debt fusion theory, democratic fusion theory, trinity of theories. And that's for the North American Civilizational Collective, for the Western civilization, for that matter, for the whole world. But I am a North American, as much as I am a world rainbow citizen, part of the LGBTQ community. I am a North American. I am a Canadian. I'm a Quebecer, Montreal, from Hawk Island, Montreal, Metropolis, big city of more than 2.5 million here on the island. My home for many, many years. My home for many, many years. My home for many, many years, where studied, analyzed, and where much of this theory was developed on this island. If not the whole theory and geopolitical analysis was developed on this island of Montreal. So in response to the Second World War, there's a short movement with tensions, pullbacks of the collective of North American civilization occurring in an intelligentsia consciousness, a security consciousness, and which evolved. One of the steps, one of the major, there were other smaller ones, but incremental steps, was, for example, the NORAD, which is the Common North American Aerospace Defense, in Canada and the US, from the 60s. Joint space exploration venues, technological affairs, and social cultural within the sports. Take, for example, sports leagues, the NHL. The NHL stands for National Hockey League, but the National Hockey League is not national because it's not exclusive to Canada, not exclusive to the United States. It has teams both in Canada and the US, so it's in reality it's binational. It's North American, but we use NHL national, just like the NBA. It's binational. North American is not just in the USA or the Canada. We have it's integrated. So this evolution or the birth began after the Second World War. At the same time, pertaining the countries of North America, however, I have to make, of course, and I made in the past lecture, the distinction is Cuba. Cuba is a paradox in this, although do include Cuba, paradoxically, in the North American Civilizational Collective, or the Collective of North American Civilization, due to, for many, many decades, the fact that a lot of tourism has occurred in Canada and Cuba. Although I have problem in the United States, in recent years there has been a rapprochement with Obama and Biden, movements and changes. But I do include Cuba. It's a paradox in the North American civilization, the collective of North American civilization, as I do include the islands, with the three main powerful states: Canada, US, and Mexico. Canada, US, and Mexico. So the response started occurring. So whether the countries of North America also signed to international treaties, but the main point was that there was no war in the Second World War between Canada and US, between Mexico and US or other states. It hasn't been for many, many decades prior to the Second World War. Cuban Revolution and other internal turmoils or problems, yes. But wars such as in the other part of Western civilization, as Germany, the UK, United Kingdom, Britain, France, and Germany, and Italy, and other countries with fascism, communism, right, in Europe, major wars. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was the First World War, so something different, but nonetheless, the countries of Austria, Hungary, right, were at war, Second World War, right, Germans fighting French and fighting Polish, and Nazi Germany, the Nazi war machine, right, which conquered the Europe. With the North American Civilizational Collective, there was no conflict. So the paradox is, it's born from that conflict within Western civilization. And it's distinct from Western civilization, distinct but not that different. A little bit different, but not that. But it's still a new, right? Paradox. It's still something new, something emergent, an emerging civilization that's a collective. It's a collective. Collective means the plural, but the plural that's united for a common goal, that has common denominators and such. And that comprises a big landmass, big geographical expanse. Look how big Canada is, how wide, coast to coast. That way. Now is the west coast. So I go from Quebec, I have Ontario, you have the prairies, three provinces of the prairies, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, right? You have Alberta, British Columbia, Vancouver. 11:01 p.m. here on the East Coast, same time zone as New York. It's -3 in Vancouver, same time as San Francisco, LA. It's -3 there. 8 o'clock p.m. So sunset. You still have the red sunset, red in rising, red in setting. My favorite color. So big landmass and big population. Canadians were close to being 38, almost 38 million Canadians, coast to coast. Mostly, 80+% within 200 kilometers from the US border. The biggest undefended border in the world, right? My policy for North America, simple, straightforward, and direct, with unique, sophisticated case-by-case and geographical expansion, security and protection from an analysis, integration with citizen integration theory being applied, but it's one border, two oceans, my brothers and sisters. As an American twice in past lives, Dawei in the back of me, 780 miles from Hawk Island, Montreal. 156 years ago, served in the U.S. Army. Right? Dawei is the Atlantic provinces. That's the Atlantic Ocean, that's the Pacific. One border, two oceans. One border, two oceans. We got two oceans. And that's a uniqueness. to the North American Civilizational Collective. And this is part of my theory developed from the social cultural, sports, the culture, the Hollywood plays a major role in the development of the North American collective, civilizational collective, or the collective of North American civilization, Hollywood, and arts and entertainment, right? With easy movies after the Second World War, cowboy movies, or the development of the West or Canada, and you see a lot of interchange Mexico, Canada, Mexico, Canada, Mexico, Canada, even in modern Hollywood movies, the theme crossing the border or of Mexicans and Canadians in the United States in XYZ things intermingling or participating, working together, or tourism and such. And of course, you have the geography. And one section is one border, two oceans. And this also solidifies, whether in the intellectual academic intelligentsia of the universities, propounding to the theories, or the politicians and the treaties and the acts and the pacts formed thereof thereafter. And a unique role part of it, Cuban Missile Crisis was another aspect, but like I said, the Cuba is a paradox of the North American civilizational collective, the civilization of North American civilizational collective, the collective of North American civilization. Cuba is a paradox. Cuban paradox with it. I have a whole chapter pages dedicated just to that. And the main argument or my analysis of inclusion is the tourism between Canada, Cuba, the trade, because Canada does trade with Cuba, Mexico as well, and more United States as well. In my theories and propositions is that treaties to be made to come together the North American civilizational collective is Cuba to be transformed to participation, public-private partnership, to have a recreational economy for tourism and recreation and nature, preservation of nature and recreation, and to have the exchange of economic, financial, commercial exchange with Cuba in a universal revolutionary centrist manner, right, rapper's manner. Integration thereof with the paradox. Cuba is the paradox, since Cuba paradoxically has been able to maintain a socialist one-party state with communism, Marxist, Leninism, with its own Cuban socialism unique to the island of Cuba. That requires another deep analysis, and from what I know, there's so much I don't know. Ignorance, many things don't know, right? I would, if somebody wants to commission, sponsor, or finance, or spend just a whole hour of coffee drinking or tea or wine with Dragan to just discuss that paradox and my propositions and my solutions as a North American theorist, philosopher of North American civilizational collective. So this North American civilizational collective has steps of its development, evolution, and transformation towards a unique collective of civilization, not completely cut off because of the treaties, the exchange, and common denominators with Western civilization, but at the same time distinct and unique from Western civilization. Three main languages spoken in the realm of the North American civilizational collective: French, English, and Spanish. Myself, as you see, attest, tell for yourselves, to manage in English, love the English language, write poetry, philosophy, dialogue, oratory, and do not say much. Leaders of the free world, not here. Stop a little bit, and it's okay, I'm not perfect. Got other vices, don't worry about it. In certain cases, I am mediocre. Certain skills, competencies, average, can only learn every day. In vino veritas, as the Romans say, in vino veritas. At one point in time in the past years, I was so effing useless that I had trouble changing a light bulb. It was clumsy and twisted. I messed it up. I made a dent. And anyways, I got some brain and some muscle, some philosophy as this one. Discussing now the North American Civilizational Collective. This emerging civilizational collective starts Second World War. Although it kind of does predate it. There's a predate Great Depression and other events. First World War as well plays a role. But mainly the Second World War, and mainly because during the Second World War the United States was attacked and drawn into the war. As Canada also joined. Although Canada joined more since we are officially still part of the what's known as the Commonwealth. By the Commonwealth, or by the British monarch. Officially, the head of state of Canada is the Queen of England. Officially, Elizabeth is the official head of state, although it's more symbolic. The Queen of England, Queen Elizabeth, is the official head of state of Canada, Canadian Confederation. And there's this distinction. Canada is more a confederation, which means that there's more decentralization of powers, executive, legislative branches of governmental power, while the United States is a federation where more centralized power of legislature, executive can occur, although the United States is also a federation with unique powers due to the states. Right? Mexico also has states. Right? Population-wise, Mexico is more than 100 million. Canada is almost 38 million. The United States around 350 million. So I have more with Cuba. It's about 11 million. Do put Haiti, Dominican Republic, and the islands. So we have more than 500 million. Think about 550 million in the North American Civilizational Collective. The collective of North American Civilization is about more than 500 million people. 550. About the equivalent to Europe, to the EU, in terms of population. In terms of geography, is about twice, if not 3 times the size of the EU, the European Union. Alright? So after the beginning of its emergence in the Second World War, and mainly the point is also the drawing of the United States, which is another paradox, which I've lectured before and called my lectures based on geopolitical analysis and independent student scholar of history, wars, geopolitics, and civilization. Unwilling empire, America, unwilling empire, America, unwilling empire, America, unwilling empire, due to, of course, the fact of the Japanese Imperial Army attacking the United States at Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, the surprise attack. Now, whether you use empire or not, that's another scholarly academic discussion of the intelligentsia, or even of in the street folk, cafes or bars or what have you, probably somewhere now drinking coffee, discussing the American empire, whether XYZ, bad or good or in between, or Pax Americana has been successful or not, or short-lived or not. Want to hear my philosophy's interpretation about it, feel free. Commission, sponsor, finance a unique event on a topic that you will. North American Civilizational Collective, its unique characteristics are social, cultural, linguistic, since the languages spoken are not that many as, for example, the European Union, right? Where in the European Union, there's what, 28 countries in the EU. I think double check facts. It might be 31. They might be 25, 26, more than 25, more than 20. That's for sure in the EU, the European Union, right? You have French, German, English, Spanish, Magyar. That's Magyar's Hungarian, right? You got Polish, you got Greek, Italian, Romanian. You got right, Bulgarian. You got Slovak, Croat. You got a lot of languages in the EU. The North American Civilizational Collective, mainly Spanish, English, French. French in Quebec, spoken by more than 8 million people. Population of a country in Europe, more than the population of Austria or Slovakia, or close to the population of Greece or so. English, Canadians, Canada, US, Spanish, Mexico. Distinction, flavors, and Cuban Spanish, Mexican Spanish. Within Mexico, there's intonations and phonetics and expressions. North Mexico, Central Mexico, Southern Mexico varies by states, just like in the United States. As the northern accent, the western on the west side, east side, south, like the deep south. Texas, Alabama, Louisiana, southern accent in the United States of USA also, with its expression. So you have nuances, sub or dialects, not that different in writing. There's close to none that's different. It's pretty much the same, but in terms of the intonation, the phonetics, the expressions, might be that there are some expressions unique to a state such as Arkansas. Might be on the prairies in Canada, and that way, 100 miles. The English has also its expressions, its intonation, its way that it's spoken, contrary to neighborhoods here in Montreal or even in New York. The English in Toronto, it's a bit different from Ottawa. But pretty much we understand each other. We're able to understand each other, even if our English is a bit one of the different accents of the North American English accents, which I have a chapter on that, and the Spanish, peculiar Cuban Spanish, right? We're able to just say excuse me, and then the second, perhaps the third time, we will understand each other. As German and French is not the same as Polish and Italian, so they have this unique. That's only a few languages. The North American Civilizational Collective. Besides the languages and the cultural aspect, we have the culture, different music, for example, hip hop, pop, culture, some rock, which rock transcends, and these musical genres are universal, global, international. They transcend, but many of them styles, unique flavors and beats originated on the North American part of the North American Civilizational Collective, with this intermixing of cultural, movies, television, and trade and tourism between countries, states such as Canada, United States, Mexico, of the North American Civilizational Collective, and the other one, of course, being trade. For example, NAFTA. NAFTA propelled another pillar, the economic, and at the same time some legal and some security inclusions, right? North American Free Trade Agreement, or for the prosperity and security of North America, right? And also security-wise, you have the NORAD for the North American Space Defense, which thinking we should take a step further now with the current situation that we have. My own theories and creations of what I vision as a defensive integrated with social media, radio, and satellite constellations, public-private partnership with North America, NATO, as part of course, the Dragan Army, part of the Dragan Army initiative, call for my own ideas about the development of the security integration with citizen integration theory applied to have coast-to-coast defense systems, missile integrated with satellites, missile defense systems on the coast to be able to intercept ICBMs or airplanes that would enter the realm of the North American Civilizational Collective. And with my own theories, coupled with debt refusion and the public-private partnership for the common defense and prosperity and ensuring of freedom and liberty in the North American Civilizational Collective, or the civilization of North America and beyond, Western civilization. My brothers and sisters in Africa, Central America, South America, and extending my invitation to world peace to all mankind. I am a North American. Now I'm discussing the North American Civilizational Collective. North American Civilizational Collective. It is a collective, an amalgamation, and at the same time of transcendence of Western civilization and an infusion due to immigration of many people integrated within the North American Civilizational Collective that have been part of other civilizations: Sino civilization, Indo civilization, Arabic civilization, African civilization, Western civilization. Although North American Civilization Collective is part of Western civilization, however, it is distinct, not completely cut off or a breakaway, but with its own, our own distinct uniqueness, common denominators, and for prosperity, for security, for a way of doing things, culture, legislator, and so on and so forth. And one point which is important is the infrastructure development, which occurred after the Second World War. Right? Started a little bit with the Roosevelt's administration and other during before the Second World War, but mainly after the Second World War. The creation of highways, big highways, Trans-Canada, which links also with the United States. The United States, what's known also as the NAFTA corridor, NAFTA corridor, which stands for North American Free Trade Agreement, which was signed in, I think the first treaty was 1988, although it predates that, but officially 1988, and then ratified again 1991, 92, 96, and steps by steps. But it has a corridor as well, because the North American Civilizational Collective has also electrical power, electricity grids, which are also integrated, right? Hydro-Quebec. Right now I'm recording this video. Clean, renewable, zero-emission energy. Brothers and sisters, workers of Hydro-Quebec, paid my bill for June. I'm good. Clean, renewable, zero-emission energy. There's 63 dams built, brains and muscle. These 63 dams built since 1963, with brains and muscle of tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of workers who throughout the decades worked and work now for Hydro-Quebec to build, maintain, upgrade, hopefully at least maintain. Right? These 63 dams for me to have this light above my head, this laptop which I'm recording and live on Facebook, all these three working on energy now, 11:22 p.m. EST. Clean, renewable, zero emission. There's no pollution. It's water. Zero emissions, zero pollution, environmentally friendly, renewable. You can't get better environmentally than this hydropower. So to Hydro-Quebec, past, present, and future. And Hydro-Quebec is also integrated power grids, the lines, they integrate across states. Hydro-Quebec also gives the electricity to states, Maine, New York, New Hampshire, right? Vermont, I think 5 or 6 states in the US on the East Coast that border or have almost border with the province of Quebec, which is big, 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 big in terms of geography. But our population as Quebecois, Quebecers, it's concentrated as it is part, Canada, more than 80%, so that's 8 out of 10 people in Canada, live within 200 miles from the border with the United States. And that's an important fact. That's an important fact. Population concentration. More than 80% are within 200 miles or kilometers. Now I have a doubt. A little bit of wine. Regardless, if it's miles, it's miles. If it's kilometers, it's kilometers. The point remains. Whether it's kilometers or miles, the population concentration is concentrated to the south, to the south, to the south of Canada. Because we can go north. North is that way. We have a lot of north. A lot of lakes. Quebec. A lot of lakes, a lot of rivers. So we have NAFTA, which is another pillar. Well, this was more economic, financial, commercial. Other pillars are cultural. Hollywood plays a major role because there's movies which portray this unique North Americanism, unique collective of North American civilization, whether it's trade, relationships, or tourism. It is portrayed in Hollywood movies, from the cowboys to XYZ to prohibition movies with the bootlegging from Canada and famous families such as Bronfman or XYZ and the Mounties, the RCMP, and the very similar cultural and linguistics and economic, financial, commercial treaties, which NAFTA plays a big one. And of course the infrastructure, not just the power grids as well, because the power grids are a lot of integrated. Even California and Texas, Arizona have an integration with Mexico, right? Our power grids are integrated. So just as Quebec, Ontario, and Canada, power grids are, there's an integration across North America. Many electrical power grids, more or less around the borders and the ramifications of the borders with the states bordering around the borders of Canada, US, Mexico. And we have the infrastructure, the integration of the infrastructure. Highways from Montreal, of course, you can go by car all the way to Mexico City, central Mexico, all the way to South Mexico and beyond, by the integration of the highways. The NAFTA corridor, which comprises not just highways, and that's for cars, for trucks, thank you truckers, for Mexico, Canada, US, for bringing these goods, unloading this food that have we to eat, this bottles of wine carried perhaps from the port of Montreal or another port, coming for me to do this video. Thanks truckers, thanks farmers of North America for the food, thanks warehouse workers, thanks workers in Hydro-Quebec, and nurses, doctors, and making a sandwich now. Let's make a meditation. 11:26 p.m. EST in Hawk Island, Montreal. Now there's a truck going to a warehouse, leaving, either going north or going south or going east or going west, across the North American Civilizational Collective, across the collective of North American civilization. Maybe from a port, maybe from Port of Montreal is going to go to Ontario, or to the prairies, or coming from the prairies here, or from a port from the Pacific, just that way. From the west coast is the Pacific, the east coast is the Atlantic. Port may be New York, coming north with goods, or going from port here to New York with goods, or going back and forth, different ones, crossing the border to Mexico, transporting avocados, transporting fruits, vegetables, legumes, melons, potatoes from the US, maybe other products, maybe oranges going to Mexico, avocados coming to Mexico, maybe liquor going to Mexico, tobacco, all the goods in the trucks, and the items, gadgets, appliances. How many trucks now? Across the whole North American Civilizational Collective, across the whole collective of North American civilization, this is for all the trucks now, across the North American Civilizational Collective, for driving now, with goods, food items, clothes, items, whatever items. Big stores, small stores, medium-sized trucks, more smaller trucks, big trucks, the huge ones. 11:28 p.m. How many? There's a definite number. And then there's a definite number going from the US to Mexico, going from Mexico to US, from Canada to US, from Canada to Mexico, from Mexico to Canada, and so on and so forth, right? Or from California all the way to Canada, from Canada to California, all across the North American Civilizational Collective. To go outside of the Mexico, Canada, US, you take the boat. And the boat will go to Cuba, Haiti, Dominican Republic with goods, maybe rum, maybe a boat now. It's coming to the port of Montreal carrying goods from Cuba. Rum from Cuba. We have rum here. Cuban rum at the SAQ here in Quebec. We have tobacco. We have coffee, tobacco, rum from Cuba, for example. Other products as well, but these are mainly the exports of Cuba, which is integrated with Canada in the trade and the tourism. So it's part of the North American Civilizational Collective, a paradox. Maybe milk now. Cheese is going to the US. That's coming to the US. Maybe some pork, maybe some bacon, maybe some Pepsi. I'm not supposed to say names because I'm not getting $1 yet. Not even $1 from via PayPal yet. 31 minutes to midnight. Maybe I'll get the first dollar donation by midnight. Or somebody sponsors, commissions, finances the next video. If not, my rent's paid, got food. I'm gonna keep on working out, training, exercising, calling all willingly loving, doing a little bit of art, rapping, philosophy, discussing. This is the second part. Probably gonna be the third in a few days or during the weekend or next week. Summary, brief of my theory known as the North American Civilizational Collective. So those truckers now going from the supply chains, carrying goods back and forth, loading, unloading trucks. I'm gonna salute the workers who now cross the North American Civilizational Collective. The workers in coast to coast, in the different restaurants, making a hamburger, cheeseburger, salad, preparing a coffee for us to at least maintain civilization, to get the goods necessary, because brothers and sisters, everybody gotta eat. Even those rich multi-millionaire athletes who are now playing, or on the West Coast, they're still playing because it's 8:30. Time zones. They're playing maybe now in HL, even on the West Coast, even Central, even now, maybe now in New York, somewhere who's playing playoffs, NHL, NBA, which are binational, Canada, US joint. They're not really national, the word not really match national, because national would be just in Canada or just in US or just in Mexico. They're binational, multinational, right? They also gotta eat, the multi-millionaires, multi-billionaires, they gotta eat. So goods are coming, flowing now. Trucks are going from Canada to US, from Mexico to US, from US to Mexico, from Canada to Mexico, and vice versa, from US to Canada, from Canada to Mexico, Canada to US, US to Canada, carrying different goods. We could discern a bit and know, because we know what we export more, we know what we import more. Perhaps we import more wine than we export, that's for sure. We have some wine which are good here in Canada. Right. Mexico, we have fruits, vegetables from Mexico, avocados, other fruits, right? Tequila, other goods, different goods. Then we can have maybe pork from the US, pork from Canada, bacon, Canadian bacon, or eggs, milk, dairy products. So many products, everything that we have on the market from North America. Right? Cucumbers, we go big ones in Quebec. Just bought a big one. It's all special, 69 cents Canadian. Wow, I was like, wow. This price is increasing, inflation on 69 cents, grabbed it right away. Produit Quebec, product of Quebec, grown somewhere maybe around Hawk Island. I have some experience in urban farming, past lives, by the Nile, by the Euphrates, by the Ganges, by the Danube, as a farmer. I have some experience in this life, some urban farming a few times. So basically at smaller lots, smaller farms, smaller area of planting and harvesting the fruits of the labor of farming, urban farming. So we have the infrastructure, the highways, which connect individuals, corporations, governments, highways that link Canada, US, Mexico. Highways where the truckers, buses, cars of individual citizens going back and forth. We have the railways. As integration of railways, Canada, US, for the supply chains with gas, with wheat, with lentils, potatoes, all sorts of goods, in and people, like people as well. Commercial trains, via rail, CN, the United States rails, all the way to Mexico. By train, right? We go by train. They're integrated. As an integration, it goes, and then we have, just like the highways are integrated. The highways, of course, we have the planes. We can fly from Montreal, Hawk Island, straight to Mexico City, or more touristic destination. Mexico City is a mega city, more than 20 million people. I believe that Mexico is now the most populated metropolitan area of the North American Civilizational Collective. And then we have that urbanization, which in the past decades, of course, also in the past decades, China has seen a massive urbanization. But this, at the beginning, from the 50s, let's say from the end of the Second World War till about 1984, because I say 1984, China also started mass urbanizing. After 1984 till today, you have China's mega cities, right? Chinese mega cities. That's a whole other discussion, the urbanization of China, for another, maybe sponsor, commission, DM finance, for just discussing Sino civilization, modern socialist, Chinese socialism with Chinese characteristics, their ideological, philosophical, social brand of socialism slash communism, and origin is in the Karl Marx and Engels philosophy of the 19th century, right? So the infrastructure is not only highways, but also railways, trains. So this forms a major pillar in the development, the emergence of the North American Civilizational Collective. Transportation, because it enables tourism, it enables migrations, it enables the flow, change of ideas, it enables the flow and the trade of goods, and thus it consolidates, it helps form common denominators for the prosperity, security of the collective of North American civilization. The infrastructure, power grid, which I include in the infrastructure development for the decades, the mass urbanization, which after the Second World War, when is the origins of the birth, the beginning, when the spawn of North American civilization, the collective of North American civilization begins in response to what has happened within North American civilization, thus arising as a distinct paradoxical response due to the fact that there was no wars within the North American Civilizational Collective, within the states comprising the North American Civilizational Collective, at the same time seeing the intelligentsia, academia, politicians that the wars in Europe want something to avert here in the North America. And I, of course, do stand for that, as much as we have internal tensions, and we have problems, criminality, and growing suicide rates, depression, and we have fentanyl crises. Those are perhaps my solutions in parallel with others. In some things I need help myself. For example, now I could use my rent's paid, my electricity bill is paid, my phone bill is paid, one half of my phone bill. My electricity bill is paid in full, one half of my phone bill, and one rent is paid in full, half of my phone bill is paid, electricity bill is paid full. That trinity got four-dimension food, what I could use and need as an extra would need a good massage therapy. Good massage. One of those sports athletes, Tom Brady come massage Dragan. They will rate your massage game, massage hand, your neck rub. Good, good. I'm gonna say 6, 7. Oh, it goes to 8. Oh, it goes back to 7. Oh, not bad, not bad. There we go. Oh yeah, get in there. Oh yeah. Oh yes. That's what I could fucking need. Use a little bit of extra after having shelter, food, electricity, internet connection secured, right? So my proposition, the Dragon Army of security and service of security and service of security of services for the 21st century, via citizen integration theory, debt fusion theory, and democratic fusion theory, the application thereof of my trinity of theories. So back to the geopolitical theory of the North American civilizational collective, that this constitution constitutes a distinct civilization that's a collective from Western civilization, at the same time not a complete breakaway from, but distinct, a new emergence, and it's emerging now as I'm speaking, with all the goods and services within the collective of North American civilization and the ideas and the flows and the theories being implemented at the city municipal level, with the provincial state level and beyond. It's still in making now as I'm speaking. As if we do an imagination, how many trucks are now flowing from Mexico to US, coming to Canada, or going from Canada to US, or all the way to Mexico, going back and forth. Warehouses in the supply chains, the ports on the West Coast, the ports on the East Coast, the ports in Mexico. How do we secure the North American civilizational collective? How do we secure the collective of North American civilization for Western civilization, for the world for that matter? Act local, think global, act local, want world peace, act local. March here, do here in my underground room, office and temple. Still have to sweep my room, clean my room a little bit more tomorrow, and then back to do some other work. Open for business, right? But sometimes it's also internal requirements to balance the public and the private, which is not always easy, right? So our Mexican brothers and sisters within Mexico, they have their own little unique cultural distinctions and some big population, the states, right? And us, we have Canada coast to coast within the provinces, our own unique characteristics, and the United States, the states. But nonetheless, we form this North American civilizational collective, this collective of North American civilization. Other treaties propelled, and for I digress further, between for many decades, another uniqueness to the North American civilizational collective was the emergence of mega metropolises and mega urban regions between Montreal and New York, Boston, Washington D.C. area, Eastern metropolitan area, the Texas Austin area, and the San Francisco Bay Area with LA, part of Mexico City and beyond. Just mega urbanized centers, which were for a few decades, since about 1947 till about 1984. Because since 1984, China and other countries started to have mega urban populations. But for many decades, it was pretty much a unique aspect of the North American civilizational collective, of the collective of North American civilization, this development of mass mega urban centers with the periphery and the centers, the mass urbanizations from about 1947 till about 1984. Although in Tokyo, Japan, there was, and yes, Cairo, Egypt, and yes, Moscow, and yes, but the multiplicity within a geographical realm, and yes, there was in Brazil as well. I'm aware of that, the rise of, but From those decades, from 1947 till about 1984, there was not that many as mass urban centers with an encompassing mega population of tens of millions, 10 million, 20, 30 million in different cities, or from above satellites you can see the mass urbanization. And afterwards it occurred in India, in China, right? Although there was, but after 1984 in India, China picked up speed, and till now 2022, from 1984 to 2022, China of course overtook and has mega cities as well, mega metropolitan areas which comprise 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million people, just like North America has. And New York, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, mega metropolis, and Mexico City, Metropolis, Bay Area, San Francisco, LA, Austin, Texas, and you have in the Seattle, Northeast, Vancouver. So that's what I'm referring to, those different big cities forming a mega metropolitan area that's urbanized. And it's not that distinct to go from one city to the other. It is, this urbanization or industrialized and such. So common defense and common economic joint prosperity treaties, NAFTA, NORAD earlier, NAFTA afterwards. Major pillars of the development of the collective of North American civilization. And major pillars, super important. And the steps of the NAFTA, ratification of treaties, propelling it. NAFTA plays a major part, but it predates NAFTA, the development. And of course, we have the two philosophical social ideas or philosophies of the melting pot and multiculturalism, which coexist. This North American civilizational collective, which coexist. Melting pot is more the amalgamation, the unification of different peoples, integration of different peoples, uniting of different peoples, coming together of different peoples to form a more unified culture, people. Melting pot. It's more United States in different areas. United States in New York more perhaps than others. LA. The melting pot. Concept, philosophy, idea of the melting pot. E pluribus unum. From many one. The motto or the mottos. Latin. To form one entity or one cohesive united group by intermarriage, by adoption of common culture, and so on. While multiculturalism is having together the different cultures working together, while melting pot is fusing together, uniting the cultures to give one culture. While multiculturalism is coexistence of different cultures together for a common goal, prosperity, prosperity, right? While being working together, but not necessarily marrying or fusing, not necessarily fusing. While the melting pot is fusing, uniting, marrying, right, together to form another culture, a new culture, or from that taking XYZ and having the common denominators. Melting pot is distinct as a cultural practice, norm, philosophy from multiculturalism. The melting pot. Concept, idea, practice, because it has been practiced more or less. Even in Canada, it has been practiced. The US more, but Canada is more multicultural. United States is adopted more melting pot, especially in places such as New York, LA, and such, right? These two ideas. They're not conflict, or so they're just the way of living, or of idea of progress is by these two ways: multiculturalism is coexistence, working together with different cultures to attain common goals, common desires, prosperity, security, XYZ. Multiculturalism and melting pot. So me, well, I'm a little of each, I'm a little of each, I'm a little of each. So these ideas, the philosophy of the society to do things, to create, to do, to exist, to live in a melting pot society and a multicultural society. A melting pot and a multicultural society. A little of each myself. So another aspect, of course, would be the culture of North America, whether propagated by Hollywood in music and arts, or independent theater, right? Independent even some level of sports. American football, we have CFL, Canadian football, which is not that distinct different, right? We have hockey, right? Basketball, baseball, right? Which of course they are global, international, universal, but very much not North American from a North American's perspective. Sports culture that form common denominators of North America. And then the infrastructure, and the consciousness, right? And more in the past decades, or North America. I'm a North American. Right? I say it, I'm a North American. It's a forming of the consciousness of a philosophy due to a lot of different factors coming in as a collective. And this is the word collective here, not cooperative, but collective. Whether of a psychological nature, right, of geographical nature, knowing, of course, when you learn, when you study, when you educate on the map, or if you traveled to the United States of Canada, or you look on the map, or you see in a news, you see a map of North America, or XYZ, you know, or that, well, we have Canada, US, and Mexico. Big countries, geographical countries. Canada, not that big population, 38 million, but Mexico, big population, more than 100 million. United States, more than 350 million, so more than 550 million, with the islands as well. Do include the islands. The paradox of do include Cuba, but Cuba is a unique paradox to the North American civilizational collective, which has to be discussed more in depth of how this paradox came to be, and mainly do integrate Cuba due to the fact that for many decades, perhaps since the 80s, early 90s, due to the tourism, Canada, Quebec, especially Quebec, Canada, a lot of Quebecers go to Cuba. We have established tourism and trade. So due to this establishment, Cuba jumps into the North American civilizational collective. There's a jump. But this jump not only occurs due to the opening between Canada doing trade and tourism with Cuba, but also as a response of the dissolution of the Soviet Union. So this peculiar geopolitical event that is far away, well, far away more or less, distance now with the computers, satellites, right? Nonetheless, in the dissolution of the Soviet Union and the consequent fall of socialist slash communist states of Eastern Europe. Maybe let's start at the fall of the Berlin Wall, November 9th, 1989. Germany, for decades, was separated. The German people, the Germans, the German state country was for 1947, 1989, 42 years, more than 42 years, or 37 years, something like that. Between 37 years and 42 years, Germany was like east-west. East Germany was, for many decades, Germany was, Eastern Germany, where the Stasi and the socialist communist regime, ideology, philosophy, politics dominated Eastern Germany was communist socialist, Western Germany was pro-West US, democratic, Republican, right? So November 9, 1989 plays a part of Cuba's paradoxical jump into the North American civilizational collective, while and the dissolution of the Soviet Union makes a further step, so that Cuba jumps in the 90s. So now for more than 30 years or so, Cuba is part of the North American civilizational collective, the collective of North American civilization, due to an event, the fall of socialism, communism in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, the dissolution of the USSR, the establishment of trade and tourism with Canada, and lately the Obama administration, Biden, the rapprochement, the US opening up a little bit to Cuba, lifting some of the restrictions and some of the deals with the embargo, which have my own propositions and theories for the collective prosperity security of the North American civilizational collective, which we'll discuss in the coming days ahead. Part of the dancing goddess in the Dragon Kingdom and the Phoenix People's Party, and my own independent philosophies, theories as a geopolitical analyst and thinker, and independent artist, activist, athlete, philosopher, lover of wine, with vices, lusts, and issues, and do not play self-righteous. Rarely will thou see me read from a piece of paper unless it's statistics, technical issues, which better read than be clumsy enough and mispronounce words and what have you. Do make mistakes. The North American Civilizational Collective has those parts come together as a collective. The culture, languages, which many people are trilingual. Right? It's not so many languages. It's another factor for propelling this horizon, because there's not so many languages. Like in the EU, if the EU managed, we can do even better. North Americans, we can do even better. We can integrate economic, social, and can be a North American civilizational collective together. Wow. I'm a dreamer, part of it, and have been for many years in this struggling, suffering, XYZ. This, I don't mind, economic, financial, commercial, social, political, military, social, for the security, freedom, ensuring of liberty and prosperity, the North American collective by this private-public partnership, and beyond for the Americas as a Pan-American and internationalist as well. This need your help, need all willingly loving. So the trade of goods now is a major factor. Free flow of goods, free flow of tourism, right? Culture, movies, right? A lot of movies have a lot of Spanish, right? See Hollywood movies from the past decades, even more and more Spanish, Hispanic, Spanish. The translation. Right? A lot of movies happen in Mexico. A lot of movies happen in Canada, and they grow across borders, right? Tourism, the infrastructure connecting Canada, U.S., Mexico, and the rivers beyond, with the integration of the islands, right? The power grids, the electrical grid, the railways that are pillars of the infrastructure, pillars, right? That connect big cities, small cities, the three main states, Canada, US, Mexico, and beyond, with the boats, the islands, and of course the planes can go directly coast to coast, Canada to the US, direct flights, and Mexico, direct flights. And migration, right? Tourism, migration play major factors. And of course, the treaties pact signed, NAFTA, NORAD, for defense of the airspace, and of course, sort of a knowledge, an awareness, consciousness of the geographical realities. And this is another part that's a major part. The uniqueness of the North American civilizational collective, the collective of North American civilizations, that we here, North Americans, we have two oceans. both the Atlantic and both the Pacific. That way, that way, that way. East Coast is the Atlantic. That way, that way, that way. West Coast is the Pacific. One border, or I should say, no border, two oceans should be. No border, two oceans. No border, two oceans. We have to have an integration. Theory best, it is an integration theory. Local, national, international, beyond. Right? So we have this, the consciousness that in the academia, in the universities, the treaties that in the past decades, since perhaps even earlier, but perhaps the 80s, even more the 90s, even more now, early 2000s, l'Amérique du Nord, North America, Norteamericanos. We are North Americans, somos Norteamericanos, we are North American. The North American, North American, North American. I'm a North American. The North American economy, the North American system, the North American transportation system. You see on trucks, North American transport, North America. So it has that. The North American civilizational collective has the cultural, the psychological, the political dimensions, the economic security dimensions to it in XYZ parts, which begin in its origin paradoxically as a response to the wars of Europe, wars of nations within Western civilization, and thus the spawn, beginning, the origins of the collective of North American civilization, beginning as a response, paradoxical response to the wars between nations of Western civilization in Europe, and the reality that there was no war between nations of North America. Unique incidents, the Cuban Missile Crisis is a unique crisis. North America crisis, almost World War III crisis, and Cuba's paradox to be integrated makes a jump into the North American civilizational collective post the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Berlin Wall, November 9th, and the dissolution of the USSR in 1991, and thus in the 90s, Cuba becomes more integrated within the North American civilizational collective, with its own paradox of having maintained a socialist communist state, one party state, right? So we have society, culture, sports, unique transcendence of the whole of the Western civilization as was de facto pre-World War II and after as well, and the arrival, the rising of the North American civilizational collective. NORAD, the defense of the North American aerospace, Canada, US. NAFTA for the economic prosperity, which opened up the markets, US, Canada, Mexico. Can only do better, better wages, better appreciation of the truckers, love you, crossing out the borders of the farms, and the new implementation of creative theories, and debt refusion and mass financing of XYZ activities, and renewal of infrastructure which are possible, and of course to come to a deal and an agreement so that we don't have as much problems within the North American civilizational collective as possible, to be as prosperous, as united, and as joyful together to the 21st century. But of course, it's not something to the 21st century. The beginnings, the origins, birth, it predates the Second World War. There's a response, paradoxical response, and then the gradual steps, the academia, intelligentsia, the forming of alliances, of treaties, major ones, NORAD, NAFTA, the major ones, NORAD, NAFTA, and others at the individual more scale between the different corporations of Mexico, television, radio. Now the languages being that it's only Spanish, French, and English, which I can manage myself in Spanish, no problem. three languages of North America do speak English, French, pretty fluent. Spanish can read, can speak, can understand, so can manage to more than a tourism based and even read Spanish without perhaps not 100%, but a good 90%. Good enough. Can only do better and improve and love Spanish. So, intermarriage, right? Canadians, Mexicans, Americans, and the islands, right? Haiti, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Bahamas, Cuba. Tourism, infrastructure plays a key role. Right? This infrastructure allows, enables certain activities, social, economic, political, cultural, security-wise. The infrastructure, whether highways or railways, enabling trade, exchange, free flow of goods and people, and for XYZ activities, buildings, construction, development, projects, electrical grid, power grid, the agricultural sectors. Peculiar, of course, hasn't been all without any problems, and it hasn't been without tensions or without can do better. Right? We can do better in a lot of things, but those are the general pillars and ideas and pillars of this collective, the North American civilizational collective. Cultural, sports, like I've said, I've mentioned. The infrastructures, plural, highways, trucks and cars and individuals, and railways. The mega cities, big urbanization. Raise my glass for the theory, geopolitical theory, as an independent geopolitical analyst, thinker, developed, created for my analysis, reading books, studying, independent research, and experience on the ground in Hawk Island, Montreal, interacting, doing XYZ activities with Canadians from the USA, my Mexican brothers and sisters, North American civilizational collective, the prosperity, security, ensuring of liberty in the 21st century for and of the North American civilizational collective, the collective of North American civilization, which is a collective that it's plural in demographics, linguistics even, and cultural, demographic, but has common denominators, common aspirations, common ground of security, prosperity, desire for freedom, ensuring liberty, and economic prosperity. And the North American civilizational collective, the truckers now going east, west, north, south, and the realm of the civilization, the collective of North America, the North American civilizational collective.